Hi everyone, my name is Cata and I'm excited today to talk to you about a blockbuster book in the Bible. And it also features one of the greatest women leaders in the Bible, Queen Esther. Her story is riveting. It's a cliffhanger. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. It has 10 chapters and each chapter is fast action. It's like a TV drama series. I'm almost tempted to say it's like a K-drama. So, the action starts in the palace of King Xerxes in Persia. Now it's modern day Iran. He held a 180-day banquet. Imagine that. 180 continuous days of feasting, and he hosted it for all the nobles, all the high government officials, all the princes of 127 provinces under him. This occupied Ethiopia to India. And what was the purpose of this 180-day banquet? Well, especially for Persian kings, these banquets were held to show off their wealth, their power, their reach, and their influence. It was supposed to intimidate the lesser kings. It was also a time to come up with treaties and alliances, and it was a time for people to just show off how rich and how powerful they were. So it was like a huge power conference. Now, at the end of the 180 days of feasting, King Xerxes decided to ask his wife, the very beautiful Queen Vashti, to join them in the banquet because he just wanted to show her off. Now, Queen Vashti was having a party of her own with just ladies because the party of the king was only for men. Now, for some reason, she didn't want to go to the banquet. So she blatantly disobeyed the king, and that caused a great furor in the palace because that was a public humiliation. As a result of that, Queen Vashti was deposed. And of course, a new decree was sent out to the kingdom to look for a new queen, a virgin queen. Now, one of the young ladies chosen to go to the harem was Hadassah, a young Jewish girl, very beautiful, very shapely, and with a beautiful face. And she was sent to the harem. She was the cousin of Mordecai, a Jew. Now, Mordecai told her not to tell anyone that she was a Jewess because the Jews were extracted from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar and they were brought to a foreign land, a pagan country. So Mordecai, probably to protect Esther, told her that she wasn't supposed to tell anyone that she was a Jew. Now, soon after she became the queen, Mordecai just happened to hear two eunuchs who were the guards of the king discussing a plan to assassinate him. So Mordecai immediately told Esther, and Esther told the king and gave the credit to Mordecai. So that's a side story that's going to be very important at the end of the book of Esther. Now, what's important to remember is in a very good story like this, there's always a villain, right? So in comes Haman. Haman is a descendant of the Amalekites, and he had this deep-seated anger towards the Jews because remember, it was Saul, who was from the tribe of Benjamin, who killed the Amalekites. And because of that, there was this rift between the descendants of the Amalekites and those from the Benjamin tribe. And Mordecai was a Benjaminite. So that's the backstory. Now, Haman was appointed by the king to become his highest official in the land. And the law was passed that anyone who sees Haman should bow down to him. That was the law. However, Mordecai refused to do that. And so he was in danger of being executed. Haman was so enraged that Mordecai refused to bow down to him. So he managed to convince the king to issue a decree that all Jews throughout Persia would be annihilated. And the day was chosen for that. Mordecai wore sackcloth and ashes. It caused a great pandemonium among the Jews. And Mordecai sent an urgent message to Esther that she had to go to the king and beg for the life of her people. Now, in the meantime, Haman, because he was so intent on getting rid of Mordecai, he had a 75-foot pole set up, and the plan was he was going to impale Mordecai on that pole. But in a sudden twist of events, just like our TV dramas, Haman was the one who was impaled on that pole. And at the end of the story of Queen Esther, all the bad people get punished and all the good ones get rewarded. So what lessons can we learn from the life of Queen Esther? Presumably, she is a queen and probably the most powerful woman leader in the Bible. She had the position, she had the power and authority. I think a lot of us can relate with this. We go through life, we invest a lot in the work that we do, our careers, the businesses that we probably have. We invest a lot of effort, and there will be times when God will test us. If everything that we have achieved, everything that we have gained, we will be willing to risk and even to lose, if needed, just so we will obey God. This is a crossroads that I believe each of us have faced several times in our lives. Just think of Queen Esther. She was the queen of Persia, and she stood to lose her life if she went to the king and begged for the lives of her people, the Jews, and she would have to tell him that she was a Jewess. And it was not only her being a queen and all the perks and all the luxuries and all the things that she enjoyed all this time that she would have to give up, but it was her very own life. Imagine yourself in that situation. That's why I think it was very normal for Esther to say that, my goodness, don't you realize what you're asking? I could lose my life because the person who enters the inner court is immediately sentenced to death. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance from the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And these are the famous words of Mordecai. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. We have to remember that when God gives us positions of power or recognition or even wealth, prestige or fame, those are to be used for His purposes. It's not just for us to enjoy. So in this situation, Mordecai was also telling Esther, if you don't do this, there will be someone else who will take your place and do it for God. And another warning was given to her. Not only you, but your family will perish. So these are the things that Esther had to contend with. And this is where the bedrock or the foundation of our faith comes in. Obedience to God is something that happens because we were mentored to do it and we are now applying it. So the key to this is also Mordecai. Mordecai adopted Esther when her parents passed away. So he was her mentor. And he was the godly authority in her life. And we can see the character of Mordecai. He refused to kneel and bow down to anyone else but God. So he also risked his life. Because if you break the law of the king, immediately you will be killed and executed. So that tells us what kind of strength of character this Mordecai had. The other thing that struck me was Mordecai also gives us two clues about how we are supposed to look at things when God is giving us instructions to do something for Him. First, we must remember that there are dire consequences if we do not use our position or our resources or the authority that we have for His purposes. That's a scary thing, and I think that is what propelled Esther to obey. The second is, I think, and Mordecai was the one who mentioned this, that who knows that God put you in that royal position for such a time as this, which means if we do not fulfill the desires of the Lord for our position, why did He give it to us? If we do not fulfill it, we will never enjoy the full satisfaction of that God-given position. There will always be a lack. There will always be a vacuum, an emptiness, even if the position is all ours. And the other thing I'm thinking is someone else will be raised up. God will always raise up someone else if we refuse to obey Him. And if we refuse to use the position, the resources, the influence that we have for His purposes. And that someone else will get the reward. So think about it. Now, the second thing that we can learn from Queen Esther is this: humility and courage should be based on faith in God. So, Esther showed, for me, outstanding humility. Because as a queen, if it went to her head, she could have thought, and who are you? You're just my cousin. Why would you order me to do this? I'm the queen. And I'm not anymore your adopted relative. So, the humility that Esther showed is exceptional. Look at the verse where she gives an immediate answer to Mordecai. This is Esther chapter 4, verses 15 to 16. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: Go, gather together all the Jews in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And the famous words of Esther: and if I perish, I perish. Can you see the courage in those words? There is determination, there is conviction, there is commitment, because she realized that all these things that she's enjoying was really for her to do this very thing, to save the lives of her people. The thing is, so many of us probably miss that chance because we are hesitant, or we really just don't want to give up all the perks and the privileges, the position that God has given us. This reminds me of a friend. She was a very young CFO. She was asked to work on a project, and make a long story short, the results were supposed to be doctored. That's what she was instructed to do. And it was a multi-million peso project. My friend knew that if she refused to do it, she could lose her job. But she was a committed Christian, although a baby Christian, and that's the amazing thing, you know, she was a young Christian, and yet she went to her boss, and this was the GM, just like, you know, King Xerxes, and she told him, I can't do this because I'm a Christian, and this goes against my faith. I cannot doctor these figures. And it's okay if you're going to terminate me or freeze me in another department, I understand. You know, her boss couldn't talk for like maybe 30 seconds, she told me. But at the end of it, he said, you don't have to do it. And I will see you in 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, she was given another responsibility, a much bigger one. And I believe it was because her boss saw her integrity and rewarded her for it. And she was the only person in that company that was entrusted with huge amounts of money. Now imagine if she passed up that chance to obey God. I don't think she would have gotten that promotion. So, humility and courage based on our faith in God is something that God will always reward, if not here, then in heaven. I have another friend, she was working for a major foreign company, and she was working with the team, and they were supposed to submit a report that was very crucial. And the team decided that the best thing, the most convenient thing to do was to doctor certain things, certain research results. And my friend refused to sign it. And so she was ostracized by the group, which she expected. And she was made a frozen delight. They didn't give her anything to do. And eventually, she left the country and came back to the Philippines. She left a very high-paying job. A year later, she was ecstatic when she told us that when she stood up for integrity, for honesty, for the truth, it apparently impacted her teammates. And because of that, there were safeguards taken so that research results would be impossible to doctor. And that very same team decided that they would follow the example of my friend. And so my friend was saying, well, Cata, you know, I lost a lot. I lost that job. But it's more meaningful to me to know that I had a positive impact in the lives of my friends who were in that team. And it exploded. Other departments heard about it. And people from those departments, some of them, they followed suit. So the rewards can come in many forms. It can come in a promotion, or in the case of my friend, yeah, she lost her job, she lost income. She found another job here, but not as well paid. However, the emotional satisfaction, the accomplishment for her was immeasurable. So who knows what kind of reward God will give us for showing courage, for showing humility. Now, when we obey Him, we are willing to risk whatever perks or positions we have, which are all God given anyway. We're willing to risk it for God. But we know that He is a rewarder. And if we are not going to be rewarded here, for sure we will be rewarded in heaven. What's the third thing that we can learn from Esther? She used godly strategies and godly wisdom. If you will remember, the first thing that Esther asked for was for her people to fast and pray with her for 3 days and 3 nights. She chose a supernatural solution, first of all, before a human one. And we know the things that can happen during a fast. First is we really focus on God. We get to hear His voice more clearly. And we know that fasts can also demolish demonic strongholds and bondages. I believe that it was during her fast that Esther laid out the strategies and the plans on how to approach the king. If you remember, she invited the king to 2 banquets or dinners. You know, there's a saying, the fastest way to a man's heart is through his stomach. She probably thought of all his favorite food and served it to him, all the favorite wine that he liked, and regaled him with stories and made him feel like he was the most important person in the world. And that is a very godly and wise strategy. Remember, the king asked her 3 times, "What is it that you want, Esther?" And she kept him in suspense. She asked him the first time that he held out his scepter. He asked her the second time on the first banquet. And the third time he asked was the second banquet. Now, you may wonder, what's the strategy? Why did she have Haman there in both banquets? You know the saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So probably, I'm just guessing, I think Esther was trying to make Haman comfortable with her so that he would put his guards down. And it was also crucial because in the second banquet, that was when she finally told the king that there was this person who was targeting the Jews and wanting to annihilate them, and that she was one of them, and she was asking him to save them. And so the king says, "And who is this person?" And guess what? Haman was right there. So I think that was a very God-given strategy, that at the time that she accused him, Haman was there, and the king could immediately make a decision to have Haman executed. So we can see that Esther, first of all, again relied on God and chose a supernatural solution to this huge problem. And it gives us a clue about how we should really decide on things in our lives. There are things that will defy human wisdom, and it's only God's wisdom that will create the perfect solution. There are many things that we will miss if we don't go to God first. And there are supernatural things like fasting that give us so much power and so much wisdom. So we don't want to miss out on that. The important thing here is we must first go to God. When we obey God, He will also work behind the scenes to give us leverage, to give us the advantage. And also, it's part of His plan to touch people's hearts, to show favor to those who obey God. I think it's so crucial to remember that, because once we obey God, then He starts working in our favor to help us accomplish the mission that He has for us. Isaiah 55:8-9 tells us that, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." For wives who are queens of their homes, I think it's a very, very big lesson that we can learn from Esther. It was all in the timing and also in the approach. She didn't rush the king. She waited for him to relax, to be enjoying a dinner, and to be completely, I would say, completely at her mercy. So, wives, remember that timing, and also treat him like a king. So, what is the fourth lesson that we can learn from Queen Esther? Probably a lot of us miss this, but Queen Esther actually risked her life again. She approached the king once more and risked losing her life. And this time, she asked him to revoke the law that said that the Jews were going to be annihilated. So even if Haman was already executed, that law was still there. However, we know that the law of the Medes and the Persians cannot be revoked or rescinded. And instead, what the king said is, make a new decree. And it was Mordecai who wrote that new decree, and it was sent all over the 127 provinces. And what it said is that every Jew can protect himself, they can group together, protect themselves, defend themselves. They can kill anybody, any nation, any individual who attacks them. So, on the day that the Jews were supposed to be annihilated, that was the day that the Jews could protect themselves and kill those who attacked them. At the end of it all, aside from just saving the Jews who lived in Susa and in the 127 provinces, Esther actually gave the Jews a chance to protect themselves and put them in a position where they were already safe. So, what we remember most of all from Queen Esther is that she saved not only herself, but her people. This is very important because we must remember that the gifts, the resources, the influence, the reach, the connections that God gives us is not only for our self-edification or to improve our lives or to just make us enjoy life more. No, these gifts are to be used so that others can also have the gospel within their reach. So let me read these verses to you. This verse is by the Apostle Paul, and it teaches us that we are to use our lives to share the gospel. So that's Acts 20:24. However, I consider my life worth nothing to me. My only aim is to finish the race and complete the task the Lord Jesus has given me, the task of testifying to the good news of God's grace. Simply put, it means we should use everything that God has given us to reach people with the gospel. The second verse that I'd like to share with you is actually one of my favorites. It's Colossians 3:23-24. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men, since you know that you will receive an inheritance as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. I have a last story to share with you. We have a helper. Her name is Tarsing. She's been with us for more than 40 years. She never even reached grade 3. So she doesn't read, she doesn't write. We shared the gospel with her when we first became Christians. So that was like more than 35 years ago. And because of her, her sister and her sister's family became Christians. Also her grandchildren, 2 of them. And the amazing thing is this, one of her nieces helped to put up 2 churches, one in Cavite and another one in the province where they come from. Imagine that. God used our helper, who cannot read, cannot write, to help put up 2 churches through her niece. God can really multiply our humblest efforts. One mind-boggling thing I have to mention is this. The name of God is not explicitly mentioned in the book of Esther, and yet it has God's fingerprints all over it. And it tells me that if we use our lives for Him, for His purposes, God's fingerprints will be all over our lives. So it doesn't matter whether you're the queen of a country or the queen of a home, a big home, a little home, or you're the lowliest servant in the block. If you use your life for God, He will glorify you in this life and in the next. In the end, what matters is that our lives will make an impact in the times we live in. So take courage and live your life according to how God wants you to use it. Live your life for Him. Thank you, and God bless you.